You know, the last time we talked, a couple months ago, we talked about shifting patterns. That was our last chat. And I received so much great feedback from all of you that it really motivated me to do another one. I said only one a year to the HR team. Tara, who heads up our global HR, her and I were spending time together, and she said, I was like, these are a couple of topics. I listed a bunch, and I said, what do you think I should talk about? And Tara's like, resilience. She really recommended I focus on this because it addresses some key challenges and concerns at this time, and it also happens to be one of my superpowers. It's no surprise that so many of you are experiencing change fatigue in both your personal life and in your work lives. So many things are happening in a compressed time frame, some of which are unintentional, that we have had to face, such as COVID, a mini economic boom, followed by an economic drop-off, along with high inflation. And some of which are intentional, which are the goals we've set for ourselves in 2023. How can we make our way through this change fatigue without burning out, while still achieving the goals that we've set for ourselves? Increasing our resilience is one of those ways. Today, I'll share a little bit about what is resilience, how do we cultivate it. It's like strengthening a muscle. So what is resilience? Well, you can see up here, resilience is the ability to recover from setbacks. It's the ability to adapt well to change. It's the ability to keep going in the face of adversity. In 2005, Spin Master was around 400 million in sales, under 20% our current size. We were just like we are today, always on the lookout for cool products, and we found one, a really cool product called Aquedots. It contained beads that you could assemble into creative 3D designs, and when they were sprayed with water, they would stick together, forming creative and fun crafts. The product was owned by a company in Australia called Moose Toys. In our desire to drive growth, we entered into a distribution agreement with Moose Toys for the rights in North America. Aquedots soon became a sensation, winning Toy of the Year in Australia, and at the beginning of 2007, we were mobbed at Toy Fair in New York. In 2007, there was tons of interest. We started to receive a flood of requests from retailers. Retailers were like, what allocation can we get? Can we get ads and end caps and promotions and front covers? We were planning on invoicing $45 million at wholesale for Aquedots in 2007. As 2007 progressed, the product was tracking and building like a hit toy. The early sales were strong with the trajectory on track to be the biggest activity launch in the company's history. As you can imagine, we were beyond excitement heading into the holiday season, with all the dots connecting to a Christmas blowout of the Toy of the Year. By October, retailers were loving it. Their flyers were out, and we had tons of inventory on store shelves. Towards the end of October, we got an email from Chris Hars, our general counsel. Chris sent us a note telling us that a child in Australia was in critical condition, in hospital, having ingested a bunch of Aquedots. At first, we thought there was no way that the child's illness could in any way be the result of having ingested Aquedots. We had considered that a child might swallow the beads, and out of an abundance of caution, we had gone and done our own testing, above and beyond Moose, with an independent, very credited agency that was very reputable, and we tested the beads on our own. If they were in any way remotely toxic, the testing would have revealed something. With our test results clearly showing the beads as safe, we struggled to figure out what to do. We contacted the supplier in Asia who couldn't understand what was happening. While we were deeply troubled by the reports of a child being ill, we couldn't see how it was related to our product, and we wanted to be careful not to overreact and pull a healthy product needlessly from the shelves of tons of retailer. However, a couple days later, there were reports of children in North America becoming ill, and it became evident that there was something wrong. And while we had no idea that that was causing the illness of the children, it became obvious to us that we had to put out a press release. We had to issue a voluntary recall of all the product. Once we put out the release and issued the recall, the press, they just jumped, and the news exploded. We were on TV, print, radio, local, international news, and it felt like we were under full attack. I remember that night driving home, I said to Renan, I'm like, I think when we get home, there might be press waiting outside our door. What we ultimately discovered was that the manufacturer had illegally substituted an ingredient in the product for a cheaper substitute that when ingested, come on in everyone. Hi, come on in and sit down if any of you guys want. As I was saying, is what we ultimately discovered is that the manufacturer had illegally substituted an ingredient in the product for a cheaper substitute that when ingested, metabolized into a sedative, hypnotic drug. Sadly, as coincidence have it, the testing company had also been negligent and incorrectly concluded the product was safe. There were two huge pieces we could not control. In addition to the massive financial hit we took in recalling all the product and reimbursing retailers, our reputation initially took a massive hit too. Everything we had worked so hard to achieve had been painfully ripped away from us. And what was so painful was that it felt like this despite the fact that we had done all the right things. A few days ago, I called Elizabeth Scott 2 weeks ago while preparing this, and I said, Elizabeth, how did it feel? Hey, Elizabeth. And she said to me, when she returned to the office, the mood was so gloomy, you said. And you said to me, your words was, it felt like someone had died. Everyone in the office had their head down, quiet, low energy, no smiles and laughter that were typical for 450 Front Street. We were all affected by the recall, which totally took the wind out of our sails. So looking back, how did we get through this incredibly difficult time? Firstly, to be brutally honest, we had to face the discomfort of it in order to effectively deal with it. Think for a moment what that would have been like encountering a situation where no matter where you turn, it feels so scary and uncomfortable. No matter which direction we looked, if we recalled the product, not recalled the product, informing the press, not telling the press, informing retailers, it all felt scary and uncomfortable. Facing it helped us accept the reality of our situation, which in turn helped us deal with it. By facing discomfort, the truth on the table emerges quicker, and this allows us to deal with it. Our resilience goes up when we deal with things because we aren't being drained by expending energy trying to avoid the truth. What helped me face my fear in this case was collaboration. Benny, Renan, and myself and our senior team came together instantly to figure out together how to deal with the situation. We set up a war room and reached out to a crisis management company as well as other key people who we thought could help us figure out what to do. Collaboration is key to dealing with and overcoming adversity. Once we were leaning into the discomfort and supporting each other, we were able to get clear on what we could control and what we couldn't control. Because there were so many unsettling factors such as hidden negligence by our testing company, illegal activity by our manufacturer in Asia, and children being sick for reasons we couldn't determine. We had to really focus on the relevant facts. The only thing we could ultimately control was whether to do the right thing. And knowing this helped us very quickly let go of trying to control the storm around us. Distinguishing between what we can control and what we can't control is key to increasing resilience because it gave us focus and significantly inoculated us against getting drained from all those noises around us. Despite the amount of noise and uncontrollable and unknown factors swirling around us in a vortex of distraction, the path to doing the right thing was actually much easier than one might think. Benny, Renan, and I were so anchored in our values. We actually had little debate. We just spent time executing, putting our head down, and anchoring in our values. It's crucial to know your values and anchor in them if you want to be able to handle adversity with resilience. Throughout the adversity of this time, we maintained a forward-looking lens, not getting sucked into looking back with recrimination. Rather, our focus was on what do we need to do now and what comes next. Maintaining a forward-looking lens is key to ensuring resilience through adversity. It's worth noting that once we had faced our fears, once we had collaborated, once we had gotten clear about what we could control, and once we had anchored in our values, maintaining a forward-looking lens became relatively easy. Looking back at this time, it was a defining moment. It was such a defining moment for Spin Master in our history, and it helped us to establish such huge goodwill and pride from our employees that we were doing the right thing to take the hit and focus on the health of children. Also, the speed with which we responded was the subject of a lot of admiration, both in our offices and outside the industry. In the midst of difficulty, we have always found valuable lessons. It was the pain of this experience that ultimately led us to institute a policy to never, ever distribute a product unless we control the factory, and also to have our own QC people on the ground in the factory, and we've adhered to it since then. Learning from experience increases our resilience, since our future selves, our future systems, and our future processes all make the adjustments required to reduce the stress of a similar experience in the future. Codifying lessons learned is key to increasing resilience. When Renan and I were 19 years old, him and I used to drive around Southern Ontario in his VW Westerphilia van that he bought this van to travel and watch the Grateful Dead. So we used his van to go out and sell fertilizer door to door, homes, like fertilizer for weeds and all that stuff. I remember those long summer days. We knocked on thousands of doors, and I experienced a ton of rejection. I mean, when I was selling fertilizer door to door, lots of things happened. More than just having, the door slammed in my face. There's lots of stories. This is where we got our practice in a key element of resilience, which is perseverance and commitment. We learned that when we persevered through difficult days, easier ones followed. So did our sales. In the face of adversity, sticking with something and persevering allows us to taste the fruits of our labor, which refuels us, increasing our resilience. When I mentor so many of you, you say to me, "Hey, Anton, can I get a practical tip?" So I wanted to make this presentation today real. I wanted to give all of you some real practical tips. So here we go. I'm going to share my top 10 practical tips before we close out and open up for questions. So the first practical tip is pick something that works for you, for your recovery. It's no secret that tennis is one of my key forms of recovery. While it seems like I expend a ton of energy in the direction of tennis, the reality is my playing tennis is a fantastic stress reliever. I would not be able to endure the stressors of work without the recovery that tennis provides me with. It is critical to make space for recovery from stress. Without recovery, without recovery, no matter how tough we are, we'll all burn out. While tennis is my form of recovery, think about, everyone has a different form of recovery. Your form of recovery might be barbecuing or gardening, okay? Or it could be playing a musical instrument, or it could be fishing. You figure out what is your form of recovery and make sure that you're doing that in stressful times. There was a really good article in Harvard Business Review that I read preparing for this, and it talked about how important recovery is. You can't, when you're having an adverse situation, you can't just work like crazy. You need to have some recovery. The second practical tip is the practice of meditation. I'm not going to talk a lot about meditation. Over COVID, you've all read and heard. Meditation is vital because it really helps cultivate our ability to be present in difficult situations. And it is such a powerful tool to help enhance resilience. The third practical tip is don't take things personally. I'm truly natural at this, but I'll tell you something I do. So for example, if someone's behaving a certain way to me, if say someone's trying to bully me or being aggressive, I ask myself, does this person exhibit the behavior to others? If the answer is yes, they exhibit it to everyone else, then it becomes clear to me that it is their issue. It's nothing to do with me. They exhibit this to everyone, and so I don't take it personally. Why should we take something personally when someone does the same thing to everyone else? Hillary Clinton does a great masterclass sharing about how not to take things personally, and it's something I would take a look at if it's something you need to do better at. The fourth practical tip is to increase your support system and segment it. This is really neat. Developing a strong and close support system with authentic, broad, and deep relationships offers us support to draw on during tough times and is key to increasing our resilience. You see this chart up here, and there's names missing there. That just gives you an idea of how many mentors I've had. And like I said, there's a lot more. There's an article in Harvard Business Review, and it's titled, "Resilience is a Team Sport." And the article, it explains that when you talk to others and mentors, it gives, it changes your perspective. There's so many benefits. It was like 15 pages. I was reading it a couple of weeks ago on March break. And it is fascinating how effective it is when you have a support system. It can be really helpful if you also break up the support people into different categories of support so that you can see in which areas you may need to build relationships and build support. Like certain topics I know in particular, I call Jeff Cohen. Other topics I like to vent and call Tara or Chris Beardall, but I don't have all topics I yap with Tara on, and I segment where I go to for different people. About a year ago, I was in Florida hanging out with my parents. And I was on the phone and my parents were in the other room, and I was talking to one of my mentors. My mother afterwards, she turned around and my mom said to me, she said, "Why do you tell so many people about your private life?" I said, the truth is because it helps me obtain the support I need to handle the difficulties in my life. It increases my capacity to handle difficulties because I don't feel alone in facing them. The fifth practical tip is to have your eye on the prize and focus on the rocks, not the sand. While I'm always focused on the end goal, what really matters? I can even remember when Chris Hars and I were negotiating the Swimways contract, maybe a decade ago, and there was some adversity going on. I'm like, Chris, let's not get caught in the weeds. Like, what really matters here? And by really focusing on that, and having that clarity on what really matters, your experience of adversity is significantly diminished. The sixth tip is cultivate patience. Listen, I am not a naturally patient person. I mean, especially in my 20s and 30s. But I've got to tell you that in the last couple of years, I've had some moments where I've been really frustrated, and there's one thing that goes through my mind. I hear this voice, Ed Clark, Anton, be patient. Anton, be patient. Anton, be patient. This wise voice guiding me. It seems so mundane, but I tell you, when I've chosen to listen to that voice and being patient, things have played out the way I thought was best for the organization every single time. So this is the simplest tip, but for someone like me who's not naturally patient, it's been way more powerful than I thought. The seventh practical tip is there is a gift in everything. When you look back on moments of adversity, everything, I've done this exercise. I've closed my eyes, and when I've looked back on every moment of adversity, there's been a learning. There's been a correction of errors. There's been a gift. I've written them up on my wall. So now, when adversity hits, there's a part of me that's smiling a lot, knowing that there's going to be a gift of learning in it somewhere, and I will find it. The eighth practical tip is face your discomfort. With the aqueducts, you heard so much about facing your discomfort. So today, I want to invite you to begin the practice of facing discomfort in micro moments. I've always enjoyed the experience of facing discomfort because it offered me so much growth. I remember when I was 20 years old, I got a job working for McDonald's in Russia. I flew to Moscow on my own. I arrived at the airport and I was like nervous. Okay, this was 1993. On my own, I landed in Russia for a summer internship with McDonald's. Trust me, I was uncomfortable. I remember going through security and they were holding this thing with the McDonald's sign. That's how they, to know which person it was. So start small and watch your capacity to handle discomfort grow as you start to practice micro moments of being uncomfortable. When difficult circumstances arise, you'll be amazed at how much less energy you drain. Holding ourselves back from fear, which fear is an illusion, is incredibly debilitating to our systems and drains our energy as we resist what life putting in front of us. As we all know, thousands of years ago, we needed fear. Okay, that was part of our ancient bacterial, makeup. But now we don't need fear. We're not in the jungle. Fear is an illusion, and we have to get rid of that, that cellular makeup of ours. The ninth practical tip, I love this one. And Tom, you know about turning lemons into lemonade, when we're on the front line in sales. When you're feeling adversity and your automatic negative thoughts kick in, look for another way to reframe that negative perspective. For the first 10 years as Spin Master, I spent most of my time in sales when I was in my 20s. I was always with retailers like Walmart or Target. I was with KB Toys, who's not around, and Toys R Us. And I was on the front line, and buyers would ask me to return products, sign credit notes. I had so much adversity for my first 10 years. And I always went in there with, in the back of my mind, a give-get. If they wanted me to take back product, what could I get from them? Maybe sell them a product they didn't want. So reframing your inner voice from negative chatter to positive chatter and turning lemons into lemonade. Like for me, I don't see problems. I only see opportunities. And you need to learn how to trick your mind and reframe things in your brain that micro moments of adversity are opportunities. And all the time turn lemons into lemonade. Okay, the opportunity of focus, like I said, see the opportunity instead of the problem. The 10th and final practical tip is to clear the decks with loved ones and ask support. I'll tell you, when aqueducts hit, okay, I turned to my wife and I said to my wife, I'm not going to be around at evenings. I don't want to feel guilty for not being home. I need to just work like crazy. You're not going to see me for 2 months. I told her straight away because I knew this adversity was going to be, for some time. When you see adversity coming and it's going to be over an extended period of time, you need to clear the decks with loved ones and ask for support. I told my wife, as I was saying, that I was going to be occupied for the next 2 months in advance for me to clear my head, obtain support, and be able to focus because I didn't want to feel guilty when I was working late at the office. While I was preparing for this talk, I had so many more great stories. and Peter and Brittany, and they said, Anton, you got to be succinct. I know you're not naturally succinct, but we got to get rid of these stories. And I said, okay. I said, I will remove the whole stories. But I just want to tell some of our new staff who haven't been here too long, I just want to tell them about the moment, but I won't tell the story. So let me share with you a couple of big moments where the company had some resilience. In 2012, Bakugan dropped. In 2012, Bakugan dropped 450 million in sales. And in that year, we were doing 920 million in sales. And then we dropped in 1 year to 480. So Bakugan went in half and the company's sales went in. And you can imagine how much adversity on so many fronts, right? I mean, Leanne, you know, like all the adversity in that Bakugan moment, the rounds of layoffs and just everything. One of the things that happened when Bakugan slowed down was two of our offices in particular, Italy and Germany, became very unprofitable. And my partners and the executives looked at me and they said, fly there and shut the offices down. I was told, go shut down those offices. I knew that that wasn't the right thing for the company, for our legacy. I had a forward-looking lens. I knew the right thing strategically. I had the fortitude, and those offices are thriving today. And we kept the offices open. After a year and a half, people were like telling me I got to shut them down. So as you can see, our history is littered with moments of resilience, okay? And I personally had to cope with a lot of stress, building the organization. After engaging with all these stories, it became super clear to me how naturally resilient our company is. Laying out all these stories and seeing all the moments and examples and proof points, the aggregate amount of resilience across our company brought the most joy to me in preparing this presentation. Resilience runs deep in the veins of Spin Master. It's in our DNA. It's who we are, and we should celebrate, this, and celebrate our tremendous history of resilience. I hope I've been able to convey to you that resilience is a state, not a trait. It's about how we are relating to the world around us. Whether we are at work, at home, or anywhere else in our lives, we have the power to affect that state for our benefit. When facing challenges, experiencing uncertainty, it's normal, and it's absolutely normal and healthy to have moments where you feel defeated and have a negative outlook or something feels insurmountable. However, remember that resilience is a mindset supported by a set of practical tools I've shared today that you can draw on when facing adversity, navigating change, and jumping into circumstances. A good start for all of you to do is start, and I want you to reflect, all of you, write down your Aqueducts moment. What have you faced in the past? How did you respond? Can you remember how it felt? What did you learn? Then consider what Aqueducts moments are you currently facing today? How can your past learnings combined with the practical tips we discussed today be helpful? Create your own support chart, like the one I presented. Reflect on the resources you can draw on today. This will help build confidence and strengthen your resilience. We have lived and led through good times and challenging times and Aqueducts times, and we always come out better for it. I am so excited to invite all of you to begin the practice of cultivating your resilience.